really hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, and click the bell to be notified of more fantastic music content just like this. Hello and welcome to the Need to Know Music Show with me, Ronan MacManus, here on Switchbox TV. And today I'm joined by the singer of indie rock band Surfer Blood. It's John Paul Pitts. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on today.
No problem at all. No problem. We were just talking there about, you were just saying about nice weather you got over there, and we've got just above freezing over here. So yeah, we're nice and jealous of you.
Yeah, I don't want to rub it in, but it's in the 60s here. It's beautiful, and it's South Florida, so it's hot 90% of the year. This is the one time of year where it's extremely livable.
We're not even getting 6 here, never mind the 60.
That's brutal.
Yeah, that's not good, not good. But it's been a sort of a strange year this year for musicians all round, really. And it's kind of the obvious sort of question, really, is kind of how have you been sort of dealing with this year? What was cancelled? And how have you innovated? I see you've been releasing music, but you know, how did 2020 and all that it brings affect you as a musician?
Well, you know, there's no getting around it. It's been a really difficult year, and live streams are a poor placeholder for live music.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of never really taken a break from touring, and this is the longest we've ever gone without playing a show. And I won't lie, I'm really itching to get back out on the road. It's been nice because before this whole pandemic started, we were already wrapping up into the mixing phase for a full length and a couple EPs. So we've had a steady stream of output. But yeah, I mean, you know,
was that already planned for this year? That was already the releases were already planned, and you went ahead as normal, or was it changed at all?
Well, they weren't really planned, but you know, we can still mix a record in quarantine. That's not, you know, that's actually kind of nicer because there's no distractions and you can kind of take your time with it. But yeah, like I said, we were very much in the finishing stages of all these projects when this all kind of came out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it knocked everyone for 6, and I think everyone kind of went through this bit of a dip where everyone kind of was sort of celebratory at first, almost. Obviously, shows being cancelled, but then there was kind of this realization, I'm going to have all this time, and then there was a bit of a dip where everyone went, oh shit, people are dying of this. This is not great, and then I think there was a bit of a lull. It seemed in everyone's kind of enthusiasm, thinking this isn't going away anytime soon. This isn't a 2-week holiday. This is going to be a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody's output kind of, and how they dealt with it is different on that. And I was interested to know how you dealt with that. Did you go through the same sort of rise and fall of enthusiasm?
Well, I think when I knew that this was going to be a real thing is when they canceled South by Southwest. We had a new record, you know, ready for release, and you know, we were, you know, that's what you do. You put out a record, you go there, you play some shows, shake some hands, you know. And when that got canceled, I'm like, this is going to be a huge deal. And
that's been a very important thing for you, hasn't it? South by Southwest over the years, it's been something that's really loomed large in your growth, isn't it?
It is. I don't know how we did it, but we somehow managed to get notice of that crazy festival with 1,000 bands playing everywhere all day. Somehow we stood out from the crowd, which is miraculous. And yeah, it sort of, you know, got us a lot of write-ups we probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And, you know, it can be good for that.
Yes, so that being sort of cancelled and off the agenda is a bit like, okay, right, okay, we've got, I mean, I see you've released you did the EP in the summer, and you kind of have had some single songs, and that seems to have been a kind of a new route. I know a lot of bands are doing it already the last couple of years, but for my band certainly, and for other bands that I know, there's been a kind of a new route of releasing the album song by song, because it's no point in putting out an album if you can't tour it. So there's been this kind of putting out sort of consecutive singles. Was that something that you were already used to doing, or was it something that you've taken on?
I think it was kind of a necessary evil, considering this record was supposed to come out in May.
Right.
And, you know, we pushed it back all the way to September. So we kind of had to keep a steady stream of new material coming out. But as far as the album format goes, I love it. It's like, you know, it's like the novel. There's something romantic about the idea of, you know, for some reason, like between 30 and 40 minutes of music. But, you know, considering not a lot of people like listen to an LP, flip it over, listen to the B-side anymore. I don't know if it's necessary to be sort of married to any kind of format in the digital age. As much as I love it and think in terms of a whole record.
Yeah, I think it's important if you're thinking about things from a point of view of a body of work. I think it's still a good mindset to get into to want to have an album that flows and think of the listener and a lot of people still like vinyl, and that sort of making a bit of a revival has kind of reignited that A and B side thing. But I mean, certainly over the recent years, the sort of shuffle button has been the enemy of the album, isn't it? Really, the album and enemy of the artist.
It's true, and the shuffle button and the lack of attention span.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, to listen to an entire record start to finish is an undertaking, and there's a good chance you're not going to love every single song, even from your favorite artist. But yeah, there's just nothing more fun than writing all the song names down on pieces of paper and arranging them on the floor until you have the perfect track listing. And it's just like the kind of artistic undertaking that's so fun that it just won't go away because everyone just loves it so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly we do this in our band. We do a thing where we put it onto SoundCloud and everyone listens to it, and then we kind of revisit, and then you shuffle it about a bit, and you think that doesn't quite work there. This song needs to lead to this song, and it's a real art to that, and it'd be a shame if that got lost. And certainly with the advent of the CD, the A and B side thing even isn't necessarily something that people think about. But it's when you go to put your album on vinyl and you think, oh, I never, because I never done that before until recently. Started looking at vinyl and having to think, okay, there's got to be a break in this album. I hadn't thought of that. It was a full 12 track thing or 13, whatever it was, track CD, and it's a different kind of thing. But I want to talk a little bit about your sort of beginnings and your childhood and how you got into music and all that kind of stuff. What sort of age were you when you sort of discovered what sort of music you listened to and at that time when you got into music and just started to think this could be something you could do as a career?
Well, for everyone in my hometown, it was always, the hardcore and metal type of stuff
Yeah.
they were into. And I was into it too, just because I didn't really have much of a formed opinion about anything when I was in the grade 7, so I was probably like 13, 14 years old. And then I had an older friend who introduced me to the band Dinosaur Jr.,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
classic, just like great melodic punk music.
yeah.
And I was like, this has all the elements of the punk music I've been listening to, but there's something really sweet and sensitive and melodic about it. And those were the parts that really grabbed me. And, next thing you know, my friend got a guitar and I was over at his house pretty much every day playing it, more than he was, to the point where he decided to move to drums because I'd sort of taken over the role of guitarist in our.
Commandeered the guitar.
I did. I just picked it up, and I was always interested in writing songs too, like not just learning other people's songs or how to play, although there was plenty of that, but I always wanted to write my own riffs and my own progressions. And then I learned that you could record yourself onto a computer with just like a cheap computer microphone, and I kind of never ever looked back after that.
It must have been what was that feeling like when you hit that sort of, must have been a bit mind blowing and just opened up a whole world of possibilities in your mind to think, wow, I can do this. This could be something I can, I mean, at that point, could you layer? Did you have any programs you could layer stuff on? Or was it just a matter of just playing stuff live?
Oh yeah, no, we had a group a set of friends who would pass around this free weird Italian software called Intrack, which no one's ever heard of, and it's very, very, very primitive. But yeah, you can do 3, 4, 5 guitar layers on top of each other, and you know how much fun it is to put a delay pedal on infinite repeats and just keep doing stuff over that. And and I'm like, wow, I thought recording was something that was very expensive and time consuming, kind of closed to the general public, but here I am in my bedroom making these like weird soundscapes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, had a similar sort of thing when I was about 15 or 16, and the music teacher at my school, they had this sort of like cassette 4-track thing, and she sort of said to me one the summer, "Why don't you take this home for the summer?" And then she left the school in that summer, so no one knew. No one knew I had it. So I think that was her plan because it was gathering dust. So she knew that I was into it. So she kind of gifted me this 4-track, this cassette 4-track thing, which I just spent that entire summer. I was into like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and that kind of thing. I was the perfect age to hit that grunge thing. So that kind of discovery of guitars and just angst, and it's such a
Yeah.
great thing. All my friends were out running around the park and getting suntans, and I was wearing black and recording drab lyrics.
Yep, that sounds like what I was doing. I mean, for a 15-year-old, I was writing some really depressing stuff, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even think I was that sad about anything at the time.
This stuff is not going to set the world on fire, do you still have those recordings? You ever listen back to them? Have they ever
You
going to see the light
know,
of day?
I was in my high school band. It was called the Nina Pinta, which I still say was a great name
What
at
was
the
it called?
time. The Nina Pinta, like the first two of Columbus's ships.
Oh, brilliant.
And it sounded. It was like trying to sound like Sonic Youth, but definitely sounded like a high school version of that.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure somebody in the band has the recordings. Although I keep in touch with a few of the guys from the band still, but we don't know where they are, and I would love to hear them.
They're going to resurface at some point when you least expect it.
Yeah, they'll end up on SoundCloud or something out of nowhere.
Yeah, but there's those. I mean, just that time when you're in the first ever band and you're hanging out with your mates and you're playing music and you're not very good. But that's not the point. It's just so much fun, isn't it? It's just so much release, and you're sort of living that in the best you can for your age and just enjoying it. It's just something you're never quite as free, I don't think, as a musician as you are in those years.
Yeah, and you think it's good at the time. At the time, you think you're reinventing the wheel, and you realize years later you're definitely not. But I don't know. You probably wouldn't go further with it if you.
It's an important part of the process, isn't it? I suppose it's an important part of your development as a musician.
Yeah, you have the rest of your life to look back on it as a jaded old man. You should enjoy it when you're there.
So, what was what your early gigs like?
Well, the thing about living down here is there's not a lot of people who care at all about rock music, and there's not sort of the established venue hierarchy like in how in New York you'll play your first show at Mercury Lounge and maybe get a pair like 3 sentences in the Village Voice, and that'll put you in the stratosphere. And here it's like no one is there to write about your show for any publication anyone's ever heard of. So you're basically playing shows to your friends, and sometimes you'll travel out of town, play a bar gig, and hope people show up to it. So yeah, we were definitely playing to the bar crowd from like an age when we definitely should have been out the bar in the first place.
Yeah.
Or it was either that or my friend had his parents ran a dance studio, and no one would be there at night, so they would let him have a few of his friend bands play and just kind of stuff like that. So it's kind of nice because we sort of got to hone our craft in a way where there's absolutely no pressure and no expectation.
Yeah, I mean I've spent my early years really similar, actually, playing in bars where some people aren't bothered that you're there whatsoever, and you kind of but it's so that kind of does kind of give you a bit of a chance to kind of cut your teeth where there's no spotlight, really. You just kind of get a chance to sort of develop yourself and learn how to play your instrument and learn how to be on stage, even just get used to being on stage. That's an important part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be quite depressing sometimes. You're sort of looking out to the crowd, and we did a gig one time and there was 3 people there and they were all on the guest list, so no one paid to get in.
Oh yeah, we've been there before.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, when we actually had a full band together with 4 members, and Thomas Fichetti, our former guitarist, had just joined the band. We were absolutely gung-ho. We bought a van, we went and we played all these places, and we were playing to nobody or to a bar crowd who was borderline hostile to the fact that we were there being really loud. And then, we came back 6 months later after our record came out, and, suddenly we're playing to a big crowd of people at the same exact bar. And I'm thinking to myself, we're playing songs off the same album. We only have one album. But this is a much different experience from, when we were here 6 months ago.
Well, it is all kind of, a lot of it is perception. If you're sort of perceived as being a bigger band, then people pay more attention to you. If they're sort of told that you that you're good, they'll think, oh, these guys are good, you know. So it's like they'll sort of lose a bit of faith in it sometimes, you know. They're like, I was just here 6 months ago and you'd not
Yeah.
ignored me, and now suddenly I'm great, you know. But I think it's just a matter of people opening their ears to it, and you know, there is a lot of bands on that sort of scene that aren't good, and
Yeah.
and
That's
there's
fair.
people, and you sort of can forgive people for kind of being a bit sort of jaded by some of that, you know. But
I
it's
think people
certainly,
just feel so overwhelmed these days too. I mean, you're constantly having advertising pushed in your face with cute indie pop songs. Everybody in the world is in a band, and like it definitely feels like there's a lot of people competing for people, and maybe they just want to tune it out because it's a lot to you feel overwhelmed.
the hardest things up when you're looking at sort of, you know, now that the self releases are such a thing, you know, that it's harder to sort of find your audience and for the audience to find you. That yeah, you think, well, you know, how do you stand out from the crowd, and what is the filter that people put on to find the bands that they like? Because just having a record out in the shops in the old days was a kind of a stamp of approval in itself, because someone had to have liked what you do enough to make a record. But now anybody can make music. It's really hard to stand out.
Yeah, no,
How have you found Spotify and those kind of platforms for your band?
um, not very lucrative, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
But
that's it.
it's definitely great to see people from all over the world when we go overseas that learned about us just from a shuffle playlist on Spotify. You sort of have it's kind of cool because it's like the old days with the radio. They put your song on, and if people respond to it, they'll keep playing it, and hopefully it snowballs from there. An algorithm is almost the same concept. You end up in, I don't know, mix of the day on like a random Wednesday, and somebody hears your song for the first time, adds it to their playlist. Next thing you know, they're listening to all 5 of your records, So
It
it's
can,
kind of nice because, yeah.
so it can actually work in your favor. It did with one of my songs. Has got like 6,000 plays, and the rest of them have got under. This is on an album I did like 10 years ago, and
Mhm.
just found out that one of them got added to a playlist, and that the power of that propelled that song. It wasn't even the single; it was just a song that just got somehow added to a playlist. It can be quite a powerful thing. So have you been lucky enough to get those sort of playlists and that kind of thing?
We do, and every time we get added to one of the Spotify staff playlists, we know we're going to make some new fans, and that's always kind of exciting. It's like hearing your song got played on BBC One or something. You can't help but be excited by that. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So yeah, you'll see your first single, "Swim." And listening back to that song, and the production is very different to what you're doing now. There's a lot heavily reverbed, and it actually reminded me a lot of bands like Stone Roses and a lot of the kind of indie rock things that were going on over here in, say, like the early mid 90s. There was that kind of that indie sort of sound, British sound. Were you influenced by a lot of British music at that time, or would you say it was American bands that you were into?
I mean, I love the Jesus and Mary chain, and I think that's probably what I was going for. And when you listen to it again, and you'll definitely kind of hear the influence.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's pretty close. I like the Stone Roses, and you're pretty much in the ballpark of a lot of the kind of stuff that we were trying to do. And I don't know, this is one of those records where I didn't want it to sound too pure or too pristine. I kind of hate hearing my vocals like super loud and compressed and upfront and dry because, like most people, I don't love the sound of my own voice. It's just something that I've gotten used to through
Oh,
the years. And I think just producing that record in general, it was all kind of just a shot in the dark. I did not know what I was doing. I was, sort of feeling my way through it by instinct alone, and somehow it was compelling enough that people liked it. But when I first started showing those songs to people, I had no idea what they were going to say.
and what was the reaction? You got a good reaction to "Swim" and to the first album, Astro Coast. That was the first album, was it?
Yes, that
And
was.
what was the reaction to that time? And did you notice a difference in places you were playing, audiences were getting bigger, and what was that happening at that time? And what did it feel like?
Well, I mean, it was extremely validating to have people say that what you've put years of your life into is good and worthwhile, for sure. And like I said, I didn't know. I thought, is this too, one side of me was like, your songs are too poppy and catchy and there's too many hooks and like it seems like you're trying to make it too commercial. And the other side of me was like, is it weird to turn the reverb up to 10 for the first 5 seconds of the song and then turn it off, So
There's no rules. There's no rules. You can do what you want, do what you feel like. It's your art.
there are no rules. I almost kind of
Yeah.
wanted boundaries because I'm like, I can literally do anything I want, and that's terrifying. But
That's a very dangerous concept. Yeah. So you ended up on tour with Pixies.
Yes.
That was really early on.
That was the second year of our touring lives.
What was that like to be in a? What were those guys like for starters, and what was it like playing to their audiences and playing to those?
Well, I mean, they're all very strange. As you can probably tell from the music, they all have really interesting personalities. It seems like I think there's a lot of there's a lot of chatter about how they don't get along or how they dislike each other. But if that is true, it's never seeped out into public view. They were all pretty private people anyway.
Yeah.
My favorite story is Frank Black. The second night of tour, we're pulling into this giant venue in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and someone just lays on the horn, and I'm like, who is this? And I turn over, he's sitting in like an old Cadillac from the 90s, and then there's a couple in the back seat like making out. And then he just waves and drives on by, and I'm like, who are you? That is so deeply strange. I guess he just like rented a car and I don't know. I still can't explain it. I never asked, but
I like how there's more questions than there are answers out of the whole experience.
I know it's not like he ever, was like, oh, those are my friends. Like I spent the night with them or something. Just no explanation. Just everything's normal. Everything's fine.
I love that. That's brilliant. But what was it like when you got the call for that tour?
Absolute dream come true. That's another one of those bands from that period, the late 80s or early 90s indie rock world, who, I grew up listening to, listened to every single record. When I was in the 7th grade, I saw that movie Fight Club that was really popular at the time. Whereas My Mind was in the end. I went to the mall, into the music store, and I had 2 friends with me. I'm like, okay, we're all going to each get one of the CDs and we're going to trade them. We're going to rotate them. We're going to share custody of all 3. And, that was, I guess, that was like 10 years earlier. So it was really crazy to,
wow,
to get that call.
So what would that kid have said if you told him there when he had those Pixies albums that he was going to play with them?
He would say I should probably keep doing music and not worry about anything else, which is kind of what I did anyway. So yeah.
Amazing. And did Jimmy Fallon in 2012? Yes. What was that experience like playing? What's it like playing those shows? Because I've done a few sort of TV things, but nothing of that sort of scale. What are they like?
Well, the studio is a lot smaller than it looks on TV. It's very interesting the way they have the different camera angles that only go out so far because you're pretty much right on top of each other. I could have reached out and touched Questlove from where I was sitting.
Wow.
And it's filmed not in the middle of the day, but late afternoon, like around 5 o'clock.
Okay.
And you basically wait around in a dressing room for a few hours, and that's the most nervous I've ever been before anything. I was like, you can't really see it, but my knees are shaking in that video. I am sweating bullets. And I was, it's just one of those things where when it was over, it just felt like it happened so fast. I mean, we play the last chord, literally 2 seconds later, they take my mic stand away. They're like pushing the drum riser out with the drummer still on it. They are ready to go home for sure.
So get out, never come back. So you kept releasing music, but what was it? I know you lost Thomas there in 2012. 16.
Yes.
What was that? I mean, there's a parallel. You know, we lost our drummer 3 years ago, and
I'm
it's a
sorry
very
to hear that.
difficult thing to deal with. How did you? I mean, you know, what was it like as a band? I know he got sick and then he left the band. Um, but what was it like at that time going through that?
Well, he didn't want to leave, and it was pure necessity that he left the band. His doctor basically said you could either do this or if you do this, it's not going to end well. If you leave and rest and focus on your health, then there's a chance that you can beat this. And um, we knew it was bad, and he was open. He didn't try and hide anything from us. When we would go see him, and he was just so thin, and um, but he kept pulling out all these miracles one after the other to the point where I think we kind of ended up taking them for granted because he is such a, what's the word, he's just like he's a tough guy, he's a fighter, he wasn't going to go quietly.
Yeah,
And just all these things that were looking so hopeful, um one after the other, and then all of a sudden it takes a turn for the worst, and a few days later he passes. And yeah, I was just in denial about it for a long time. I think it's one thing to feel the loss emotionally, but you also have to get your head around that, it's not going to change. It's the end. And yeah, I don't know. It was it was tough following that whole thing, but yeah,
it's
he's in a better place, I hope.
it's the toughest sort of thing to carry on making music because you know that they would want you to do that. I mean, we lost our drummer on the Friday, and it was kind of a sudden-ish kind of thing. It was just kind of an accident, and then we had a charity gig the next day, and it was for an air ambulance charity thing. So we thought we can't pull out of a charity thing, so we just did the gig, thinking he would want us to do it, and then we just carried on gigging. We thought, how long would be the right amount of time to kind of wait to go back to music, and you think you should keep creating to honor them is the best way to do that. I mean, what did you guys do in terms of making music at that time? Did you find it was tough to get back to it, or had you kind of carried on? What was the feeling?
I mean, when we found out, I mean, it was just the worst timing. When you know, Thomas, he had cancer when he was younger. When he was 17, he had some sort of cancer that I don't know all the details about, but he beat it and went into remission, and that's right about the time I met him, which accounts for someone who's come that close to death really understands how precious your time is.
Yeah,
And I think I would have probably kept recording songs and putting them out on the internet, and gone about a normal life at university and whatever. But he was just like, there's no time for that. We have to do this now. These songs are great, I love them, and we're going to make sure that as many people as possible get to hear them. And you know that was the next 6 years of our lives. We were touring 150 days a year, you know going all over. We like never really took a break from touring or putting out records. And then you know the poor guy gets married, and on his honeymoon he starts to feel really sick, and he goes to the hospital, and the rest of the story.
yeah.
So
Oh no.
it would yeah, it was just the worst possible time. We had all these shows booked, and we were just kind of like, nothing's different, by the way. This is the United States, so we had to make a GoFundMe page to help pay
Yeah,
his medical bills, which was really, really, really helpful, and
yeah.
probably added months and months to his life. But yeah, it's just
That's
what can you do? You
crazy.
just keep going.
Yeah, it's crazy that you know it was with that's one of his gifts that he gave to you was to really put the pedal to the metal in terms of developing you as an artist. So he was a catalyst um, for your career, really, wasn't he? And your development as an artist, because he really sort of made you knuckle down and dragged you along at maybe at a time when you were, as you were saying, you may have kind of taken a slightly more chilled out kind of route.
Yeah, I am you know, I needed it. I needed someone to push me if I was ever going to actually take the leap and do what I was focusing on all along. I didn't really, I mean, I was just, I guess I was like young and maybe a bit immature, but I didn't care about school. Like I worked at a restaurant, but that's obviously not my passion. And this is what I would focus every spare minute of my life on. And, for him to sort of push me and, sort of end up in the situation where we're both along for a ride, we have no idea where it's going. I'm extremely grateful that he nudged me in the right direction.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. So this year, 3 releases. So in January, you did the Astro Coast 10th anniversary. There was two extra tracks on that from the original release. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that was really fun to revisit. I found a hard drive with all the demos.
Oh, fantastic.
For Astro Coast, and they were all so wacky, and I don't know what I was thinking, but it was, I obviously like polished them up a little bit before putting them on the second LP. But it was just really funny to see, like, because when you look back into a Pro Tool session, you're seeing the way your mind was processing all these ideas. But, 10 years ago when, we've learned so much, we've recorded with like some seriously like top-notch producers who were very generous about sharing everything they knew and all their techniques. And so it's just really funny to see that that 19-year-old kid and like them just trying to put the pieces of how to make a song together. And there's some good live tracks that we've done through the years, and just a nice stroll down memory lane for me.
And it was obviously this. I suppose you don't kind of realize how far you've come until you see the two things side by side, the 10 years ago and the today. You see the stark contrast of the two things. Was that something that was a realization? You think, wow, the 10 years have been, I've really learned a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like to keep things in perspective, but when it comes to songwriting and production and being a performer on stage, I'm much more comfortable than I was in 2010. I think at the time I kind of just felt like a deer in the headlights when we were thrown into situations where we were playing for lots of people. I was terrified. I had the worst stage fright ever, and now I can like take a nap before a show and just walk on the stage, and it's not something that bothers me the way it once did. But yeah, it's all growth, the whole thing.
The Hard Boiled EP was something really interesting to listen to. Tell us a little bit about that, how that came about, and because you still had the album Carefree Theatre to come out, and that came out in September, but in August you released the EP Hard Boiled. Was that, I mean, what was the story behind that EP?
Well, I didn't sit down to write an album. This is one of the few times where I've sat down and just written songs without a thought as to, where they go in the track listing or, what they bring to a record. I was just writing them to have as many as possible. And I know that's like a lot of people's normal process, but it's not really mine. So the good part of doing it that way is you end up with a lot more songs than you otherwise would. But I don't know, I want to do something different. I feel like, we've put out, this will be our 5th LP. We've put out a couple EPs along the way. And we do one thing really, really well. We have a sound that's like pretty recognizable, but there comes a time in, a band's life when you need to try something new. And I figured, let's try some guest vocalists,
Yeah, I was going to say, that was one thing I was going to point out. Yeah. So what was it like getting the guest vocalist in?
Well, we've toured a lot through the years and, kept in touch with a lot of the bands. And I wanted voices that were as unlike my own as possible. Lindsay was obviously an easy choice. She's a great lead vocalist in her own right, even though she sings mostly harmonies in the band. She has her own solo project, which is really, really good. So that was a no-brainer. And then, we chose Pip Blom, the Dutch girl who's on the last track, who her band is amazing and, seems to be doing great over in the UK in terms of shows and radio exposure and stuff. but we toured with her when she was first starting out. And I thought there's no one who's more different from me than a 17-year-old Dutch girl. And, you know, and that's one of the songs that ended up on Carefree Theater. So the instrumentals are different as well as the vocals, and it's just like a completely different version of the same song, which I thought is something that I've always really liked doing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a remix kind of thing, isn't it? You kind of just like it's kind of like a rock band version of a remix.
Yeah, it's the same idea, except for it's, you know, an all new recording and all new elements, but you know, the feel, the tempo are pretty much the same. It's just you know, when you're mixing, you just go for a very different vibe, which, you know, isn't hard to do. It's a completely different singer. And yeah, I think I got the idea from the band Yo La Tango.
Yeah.
Classic 90s indie band. They would always do multiple versions of the same song. A slow version, a fast version, an acoustic version, like a really loud rock version. You know, and I always thought that was just like really cool to, you know, almost give people an option of what kind of mood they're in, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Lemonheads did it, didn't they, with Being Around? When they brought out they had the sort of acoustic version of Being Around, which was, I think, was on Shame About Ray, or one of that was a B-side or something. And then they brought out an album version which was just completely upbeat,
Yeah.
electric punk sort of almost sounding version of it. But yeah, I like that too. I think that's really good.
Well, I guess the most obvious version, yeah, now that I think about it, is Nirvana and the Unplugged album. You know, they were
Yeah.
playing so many of the songs that people had heard, you know, full band, you know, really rock centric, straight ahead. And, you know, they did toned down versions, which, you know, were also very popular and very good in their own right. So yeah, I've always loved that concept.
Also reach a different audience as well, because I mean, I know people. I know there's a friend of mine who almost exclusively just likes Irish folk music and does not like else. And the only sort of
Okay.
the only sort of rock album that he likes, that he listens to, is that Unplugged album. So he would have never have got into Nirvana, or, you know, never listened to them, hadn't he, for that. So it is, you get maybe reach different people by doing that. So it shows a different side to you, and you can spread your wings a little bit creatively as well, which is always good.
Sounds like your friend doesn't care for electric guitars much.
He doesn't know. He plays the flute, and he plays mostly folk music. But yeah, he just really loved that album. That's one of his favorite albums. But yeah, so I think it's a good thing to do, to sort of push the boundaries a little bit in yourself as well, because you're sort of approaching things from a completely different angle, and it's always interesting to hear where a song can go.
Right. Well, I feel like I get bored with making the same release over and over again, and I'm not really worried about, you know, expanding what we do creatively, because everything we do sounds like Surfer Blood. It's still my voice, my melodic sensibilities. So, you know, you can push yourself in all kinds of different directions, and at the end of the day, your fingerprint is going to be right there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
So why not try something new? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose they bring a different singer in can kind of just changes that up, doesn't it? To changes the feel. But the band sound great behind them.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what would be sort of like the highlight of your career so far, would you say?
Oh, it's really hard to tell. There've been a lot of great moments. I'd say, you know, playing Reading and Leeds is something that I've, you know,
Wow.
always dreamed about doing. Yeah, and getting to record, you know, getting to mix a few records with Rob Schnaff, who was one of my you know, was one of my heroes before we worked with him. And you know, he, like I said, he was never shy about teaching me all of his techniques. Everything I know about recording, I pretty much learned from him. And I mean, I guess other than that, like getting to spend my 20s like traveling around the world with my best friends is something I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's the dream, isn't it? That's the dream.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're young enough to actually appreciate it, and I don't know, like meet people who live in these other places rather than just be a tourist. It was a really eye-opening experience.
And you've got the stamina to kind of enjoy yourself and still do good shows, which you sort of lose that when you get a bit older. I'll let you into a secret.
Oh yeah, now I just want to go back to the hotel room and fall asleep after shows. I'm old.
So what's the sort of plans for next year? What have you got planned for next year?
Well, we rescheduled all our dates for March of next year. So all the touring we're supposed to do this summer will hopefully take place next spring. Fingers crossed. I'm not going to predict the future because anyone who thinks they know what's going to happen with the world and how it is right now is completely wrong.
Yeah.
And full of crap, probably.
Yeah, most people making plans like a week in advance. That's about as far as it goes.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
you can be sure of. But yeah, so you have to put the dates in place. So you have to kind of have the plan
Exactly.
for best case scenario.
Yeah, you have to hope for the best because you never know. Things could change overnight and we could be back to the way things were before. And this could all be a distant memory, but that just doesn't, I'm not that optimistic these days about that kind of stuff. So I guess plan for the best, but be ready for the worst would be the expression.
Yeah, it is the expression. that is definitely the expression of 2020. I think that one is.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm itching to get back to playing live shows. If that works out, I will be a very, very grateful man.
Fantastic. And you've got just released this music. Is there any other things you've been working on in the background? Any sort of ideas for future projects, even something a bit left field, or anything that you might be thinking of?
Well, I'm always working on new songs. Right now, I have plenty of secret demos that that I'm that I'm very selfish with. It takes me a while before I show my demos to the band. I get really nervous. You really feel like you're putting yourself out there, and they're always honest with me of what they think, which is a good thing. But sometimes that can still hurt. So I'm working up the courage right now to show these demos to my band, basically. So that's where things are at the moment.
I was in a band with my brothers for years. There was 4 brothers in the band, and I'll tell you what, there's no sugarcoating of their opinion when it comes to new songs. So that was the real. I'd get shot down. Definitely got shot. That's definitely happened over the years. But in the end, it's the right thing, because you bring a song and you think sometimes you can get too wrapped up in the song yourself, and you don't see that actually it's a load of crap. And it takes someone honest to sort of go, you actually that's not very good, and you go, okay, yeah, and you realize they were right.
Well, I mean, you listen to something 3 times, and things that might have jumped out as being weird or like not fitting. After the 3rd listening, you're like, oh, that's the way it should be, and that's the way it's going to be forever. It's like cemented in your mind. You always need fresh ears. So
yeah,
I sent it to my band, but I also sent it to my sister and another one of my friends who doesn't really, who listens to completely other kinds of music, because you kind of get in like this groupthink mentality where you think, oh, this song right here, this is going to be the single for sure, and somebody else listens to it like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So you don't want to get into that groupthink mentality.
Yeah, I definitely, and I think sometimes the band are the worst people to pick singles sometimes, or as you say, the highlights. So it's good. That's good. So you got people that you bounce it off. That's an important part of the process too. That's good.
Yeah, we've been wrong before with single selection. So yeah, I mean, you need someone outside the process to take a look at it.
Absolutely. It's fantasy gig time. This is kind of 2020 has brought this on in my mind. This kind of like sort of almost like gig porn, you're kind of thinking, and so there's a show, a fantasy show. You're on first, and there's a band on next, and there's a headline. They can be alive or dead from any era.
Wonderful.
We can only choose 2. Who are they going to be?
Well, we'll be first of 3.
Yeah.
The Smiths can be direct support, and David Bowie can be the headliner.
There you go. As easy as that.
Yeah, I've thought about this before.
Fantastic. And we also asked for recommendation on the show. So this is you basically, this could be someone that they want to give a shout out to, just someone people need to check out, or it could be a band that has influenced you so much over the years that people should check them out from that perspective. Who would be your recommendation?
Well, 2 artists I've gotten into this year who now I'm trying to blatantly rip off in some of my newer songs, actually, is one is this guy, Chris Cohen from LA, who was a multi-instrumentalist, and He has this record called Overgrown Path, which is a masterpiece, and I can't believe I didn't hear it until recently.
Yeah.
And the other one is a singer, I think she's Welsh, called Kate Laban, who has a really great and also kind of a scary voice, but her songwriting is really good, and it's just really interesting music. So that's Chris Cohen and Kate Laban.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links to their stuff in the description, and also links to your stuff. What's the best place for people to keep in touch with what's going on?
We've become really active on Bandcamp recently,
Oh, I
and
love Bandcamp. Isn't it
I
great?
know it's a rabbit hole that never ends.
It is. It's the place where you can lose entire days,
Mhm.
just hopping from band to band to band. And the way that YouTube does that sort of thing, where you end up down a rabbit hole, and Bandcamp is definitely one of those places where you can discover some great music.
Definitely, yeah.
So people can go to there, and for people that don't know, it's kind of built for DIY musicians, and there's so many great bands on there, and they do all sorts of things where you can pay what you like, and it's a great place for people just to put stuff out there, and they pay really good. You
Mhm.
get most of your money from there, which is a rarity these days with digital platforms.
Oh my God. I mean, being able to sell our records and our merchandise online has been a lifesaver during the lockdown. So, thank you to all our fans for continuing to support us, even though we can't come to your town and play shows anytime soon, apparently. But yeah.
Well, we can, well, people can keep in touch with you on Bandcamp, and all your latest releases and news and merch and everything. Check you guys out on there. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the best place to look for upcoming shows and upcoming releases.
Fantastic. Listen, John, thanks so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
You too. Thank you for
And
having me on.
congratulations on all the releases this year. It's fantastic to see you making so much music and hearing it all, and it's fantastic to see you guys just continuing to press on, and in these troubled times that we're living in right now for musicians. It's great, and long
Well,
may it continue.
thank you for making the time. Thank you for the great interview. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, John. Cheers, man. Take care.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Cheers now. Thank you.